This is Hua. I'm so happy and so glad to be back here today. Today in the East Coast is another very sunny day, although the temperatures are in the low 30s. I am hoping and looking forward to spring when everything is sprouting and blossoming. I hope that you are doing well wherever you are located and hoping that you are experiencing the best of your life so far. And I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. Today I am going to be reading a romantic comedy. Yes, a romantic comedy. This is filled with quirky, laughter, love, and a little bit of everything in between. Spice and nice. And this one is called Dellanna. And Dellanna was written on a whim, actually, in the middle of cold coffee and cold pizza on a midnight raining night many moons ago. This was one that I had planned on turning into a film, but I didn't. And so today I'm going to be reading the story to you. I've turned it back from a script into an original novel. And this story is written in multiple different points of view, beginning with the character's name. So enjoy.
Without love in your heart, without love by your side, without love playing part, tell me what you
Dellanna. They say that love can come your way at any given point in life. Whether you are prepared or not, it will hit you. Sometimes it comes softly and gives you subtle hints, and you're left wondering, what if it was true love? Then, at other times, it hits you so hard that you're physically swept off your feet. One thing I know for sure is that when I met Connor, I was swept away hard. I'd always been the quiet friend who held purses while the other girls walked off with guys to dance. I wore geeky glasses, and I wasn't very well developed when it came to body parts, even at the age of 30. I had wondered if I would be alone for the rest of my life. And then love came my way without warning, and I ended up falling in love deeper than I ever expected, not with just one man, but two. Love is like a thief. It slithers into your heart without you noticing and takes away the one thing that you thought belonged to you, your heart. You become a wallowing shadow without any purpose, and it stings to even breathe. By the time you realize it's love, you're so deep you're trapped. It's an unholy alliance to some, for it breaks barriers in hearts. But to me, it was the most pure thing on earth, my one true holy grail that I found to be of my one sole purpose on earth. I found peace, and it brought me to a level of understanding of myself that I never knew possible. First, you'll need to understand who I was and why I was the way that I am, and then you'll understand why my heart swelled when both men came along.
When I think about the way we used to be, when I think about the things you took from me, I know that I am so much better. When I look at what
Dellanna. It was already Monday, and I didn't get to enjoy the weekend. I was exhausted, beyond restless, and in no shape to go to work. My eyes were so heavy, and I felt as if I had been hit by a train. Well, no train physically, but I had spent the weekend tearing down the wallpaper in my small cottage home and repainting the walls. My fingernails were crusted with dry paint, and I realized that I had gone to bed in my overalls without showering from pure exhaustion. Running dirty fingers through my short, dark strands, I let out a long breath. The second warning alarm went off, and I groaned again as I reached over and silenced it. Downtown St. Paul was always a little busy in the mornings with people rushing to work, and those who were already late. I worked at my aunt's flower shop on the corner of University and Barstow. She'd been in business for over 10 years, and after college, which I had gone against everyone's wishes and majored in political science, I found myself jobless. My aunt offered me a job and I took it. That was when I was 24 and I recently just turned 30. I didn't mind the job because it was simple and I didn't have to talk to people. My aunt did all the talking. I did all the packaging in the back. When I arrived, my aunt was already in, muttering about lost packages. I took my coat off and had just hung it when she came in around the corner. My Aunt Kate was 45, divorced, hot, and successful. Did she need a man? Not really, but she was still on the prowl for what she called the one. She was tall and thin, unlike my mother, who had been short and curvy. I wished I had her genes, but I had inherited my mother's. But when I lost my mother and I looked in the mirror, I was kind of glad I had her genes. It was sort of a way of seeing her when I looked at myself. "What's wrong?" I asked. She laughed and pointed to an opened box. "That is what's wrong. The damn man sent me over 6 dozen bent roses. He claims it's not his fault he got into an accident and everything was spilled and ruined. God damn it, I've got a wedding this weekend, and these were supposed to be here and to sprout in time. Look, now I have to replace them and wait another 24 hours before they arrive. Oh, I just hope that, I pray and I hope that they will open by the time Sunday arrives." I went to the box and saw the damaged roses. I cringed and looked up at my aunt, who was fuming. She turned her back to me as she dialed the phone and started asking for management. I picked up the box and brought it to the back where it would be out of sight. I began taking the roses out one by one and laying them on the counter. Some were still in good condition, while others were badly bent out of shape. I heard the door ding, and then my aunt poked her head in. "Dellanna, please go take care of the customer. I'm sorry, but I've got a million things to do, and I need you up front today." I paled, and she saw it. "I'm sorry. I know that you're not used to it, but you know every single flower in here. Please, just do it." She left, and I gulped. My feet were glued to where I stood until I heard the customer service bell ring once, twice, and then 3 times. I forced my feet to walk forward, and I found a man standing with his back to me. He wore a black leather jacket and was very tall. I walked up behind the counter, pushed my glasses up my nose, and cleared my throat. He turned around, and our eyes met. He had the most pleasant brightness in his blue eyes that made me want to stare into them. His lips were full, sensual, and his jawline was chiseled to perfection. A strong aroma of spice spiraled toward me, and as he walked toward the counter with a suave stance, I found myself backing up. His alpha male presence made me twitch in so many places that I never knew existed. He was beyond anything I'd ever seen. I found it hard to breathe. And then he smiled. I lost my balance and dropped to my knees. "Are you okay?" he asked in a deep baritone voice that was like rich silk. Standing up, feeling embarrassed and stupid, I cleared my throat and nodded. I clumsily grabbed a pen and notepad on the counter. I flipped it twice until I found a new piece of order form. He watched me the entire time, and I was shaking as I tried to avoid eye contact. You're here for order?" I whispered. Yeah. Is there anyone else working here?" I finally looked up and realized his question was asked because I probably appeared to be out of whack and didn't know how to take orders. I cleared my throat again and pushed my glasses up higher. "I can take your order, sir. What would you like?" I said more sternly. The confidence in me must have assured him because he started speaking. "I'd like something simple. I don't want roses. They're too romantic." "How about lilies?" He made a face. I pulled my shoulders back. Daisies? His eyes lit up. I smiled. Yellow daisies? I think they're the most simplest form of flowers. If you're shooting for simple, I'd go for those. He nodded and then smiled, which made my heart swell. Okay, you just sold me on that. I'd like a dozen. I don't need a card. Got it. Hold on a moment. I walked off to the back room and gathered up the dozen daisies we had available. I came back and took the light beige wax paper and the barn string with me. When I returned to the counter, he was watching as I wrapped the daisies up and tied the barn string to keep the wax paper in place. I handed it to him, and he smiled. Hey, that's pretty creative. How much do I owe you? That'd be $20.99. He handed me his credit card, and I glanced at his name. Connor Anders. I ran it and had him sign it. As I handed it back to him, I avoided our fingers brushing. He gave me a salute, picked up the daisies, and left. I finally let out the breath I was holding and crumbled to the floor in a heated rush.
'Cause darling, there is nothing right when all you seem to do is lie. Those days are gone. I'm walking tall while you're alone. When I think about the way.
Connor. I was tired today, and although it was supposed to be a day of celebrating, I just couldn't find the heart to smile at everyone in the office. They were throwing congratulations in my face and swapping my back for winning the offer to design the new stadium downtown. But my feet were heavy, and my heart was full of anger. Even the pretty daisies in my hands were now ugly. I rushed past the crowd and into the silence of my office, where I dropped the daisies on my desk. They looked like they were laughing at me, so I tossed them into the garbage. I sat down and pinched the bridge of my nose. My headache was getting worse as I thought about what had just happened. How could I not see it? How could I have missed all the signs? My inner voice laughed at me, and I rubbed my temples. Okay, so I had been working extremely hard and long hours since I put a bid in for the contract. I'd been sleeping in my office at times and waking up to freshen in my spare bathroom. Then I would continue on the day's work without even phoning home. And then today I went to surprise her with the yellow simple daisies, and I found her packing with him, waiting for her in the living room. My blood boiled and I saw red. But when she tearfully explained that I hadn't been around for months and I pushed her away into another man's arms, I had to rethink about what I had done wrong. But I loved her the entire time that I was absent. Didn't that account for anything? The door to my office opened, and my friend and colleague, Joe Grant, entered wearing a black suit and gray tie. He had a smile on his handsome face as his blue eyes held happiness. He closed the door and clapped his hands together, happier than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't a bad man, but he wasn't a good man either. He'd lost 2 great wives and was working on wooing a third. I don't think I'll agree to be his best man again if he should decide to marry this one. What's the sad puppy look for? Dude, come on, you won the bid, Joe said as he pulled out a chair and sat down. He ran a hand through his sandy hair and planted one of his $1,000,000 smiles on his face. But I felt nothing. I shoved myself to my feet and looked out the window from the 20th floor. The view did nothing today to clear my foggy head. What's wrong? Joe asked. I turned around. Sheila left me. Joe's smile disappeared and he leaned back in his chair. Ah, shit, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't realize you two were having problems. I didn't either. Cold blow, huh? He was there at my house, waiting for her as she packed. Joe whistled and shook his head. Damn. At least when my ex-wives left me, it was because I was an asshole, not because of another man. Oh, gee, thanks, Joe. This is making me feel a hell of a lot better. Would you like to hang my neck in a noose too while you're at it? Joe stood and raised his hands in surrender. Sorry, buddy. Didn't mean to walk on fragile ground. He lowered his hands. Look, why don't you take the day off and go rest at home? You won the bid, and that's what we can work on in the next few weeks to get your mind off of her. I know you've been working hard for it. That's just it. I've been working hard, and that's why she left. In her own words, I was an absent partner. This shit burns. It does, buddy. But I promise you that it will blow over, and you'll be like new again. He turned to go and then saw the daisies in the garbage can. He picked them up and looked up at me. Hey, can I take these to my girl? Dellanna. I spent a majority of my lunchtime stirring the tomato soup I packed earlier today and thinking about the stranger who had captured my heart. I had never had any kind of moment like that before, and long after he left, I was still buzzing from the heat of his presence. I could still smell his fragrance, and I longed to see his eyes again. Connor. That name will haunt me for the rest of my life. If you stir it any longer, I promise you it'll start to eat itself, Kate said as she entered the small room we used as the lunch area and break room. I straightened and cleared my throat, forcing myself to take a spoonful of what was now cold tomato soup. She pulled out a chair and sat down, taking out the salad she'd packed. She watched me, and I pushed my glasses up my nose. Sweetie, I saw that man. Hell, he was hot enough to melt the Arctic continent. You don't have to hide anything from me. Any person who didn't react to his charm would have to be blind. It's just foolish wishing, I whispered. He'd never look at me anyway. She took her fork in her hand but didn't eat. She stared at me and then shrugged. Who knows? A little makeup and new hair might do some justice. I mean, if you're serious about getting a man, Dellanna, I'd start with that. You have great skin, always did, thanks to your mother. But the rest might just need some tweaking. I frowned. I'm too tired to keep up with the maintenance. Well, sometimes a little maintenance goes a long way to getting the man you want. You know, natural beauty is just not what we are all born with. Some of us need a little help. I need a lot of help. She took a forkful of her salad and chewed. Why are you being so hard on yourself? You're a smart woman, Dellanna. Right. That's the first thing guys go for, are smart women. Usually they want the sexy, long legs, big-breasted chick who can do weird things in bed. Kate laughed. Weird things? What weird things? What have you been reading? Nothing. I'm just guessing. What men want. Isn't that what men want? Oh my God, honey, you're so innocent. I find it hilarious. Trust me, men don't always go for things like that. Granted, those women are our competitions, but they don't last very long. Sooner or later, they end up coming back for the smart ones. Well, the assholes don't, but the right men do, so chin up. After lunch, I continued packing the flowers in the back into the fridge and labeling them as I went. I heard my aunt tend to customers throughout the day, and I prayed that I never had to wait on another customer again. But then I found that each time the doorbell dinged, I looked out in the hopes that it was Connor coming back to order another batch of daisies. But it was always the opposite. When the day came to an end, I gave my aunt a hug goodbye and walked the 2 blocks to my small cottage house. The wind was brutal as the evening was catching up. Winter in Minnesota was like a woman. It was either snowing like crazy or sunny as heck. It never made up its mind. I reached my cottage and took my key out to open the door. I heard the garage door opening next door, and I saw my neighbor drive his block forward into it. I ignored it as he wasn't a very nice man. He sometimes swore at people who walked too close to his front yard. He was a young man, but he was as grumpy as an old grandpa. I entered my house, locked the door, and took my coat off. I walked to the kitchen and pulled open the fridge, wondering what to make for dinner. This was my routine, day in and day out. I came home and I came to ask the biggest question. What was for dinner? I usually ate standing in the kitchen, and as much as it was sad, I was so used to it that I became numb. Was my life always this way? No, I was once happy. Before my mother died, before my father left, before Rick embarrassed me in front of 200 people. My mother dying, I was still healing from that, and I knew that as time passed, as much as it hurt, I would be able to face the day. My father leaving, it didn't bother me because I was too young to care, and my mother was more of a father for me. But Rick leaving me at the altar while he ran off on a honeymoon with a blonde, that would never leave me. I could never get over that. It was the one thing that held me back from falling in love again. I was afraid. He took my self-esteem and he crushed it into tiny pieces. He broke me into a fragile woman and left me bitter to the point of no existence. I lost my entire way and I felt blind to where I am now. Seeing Connor today reminded me of how I used to feel. My heart had beat rapidly and I felt myself becoming a woman, feeling lingering pleasure in places I thought had gone cold. But I knew right away that a man who looked like him would never see me as anything but just a strange woman. I was too scared because Rick had the same status in life as Connor did. He was the handsome, tall, and rich man who could get any girl he wanted. But when he asked me out, I was thrilled. He had seen me, or so I thought, until the day I dressed in my wedding gown and stood at the altar waiting for my absent groom. As the seconds turned into minutes and the minutes became longer, I knew right away that I would never be a bride. The 200 people who showed up looked at me with pity, and I lost every brave part of me. It was the hardest day of my life to remember, and it had been 6 years since, but a heart that was broken had no way to go home without a guiding hand. I woke with a start from the alarm again. I had slept better and was well rested. I dressed in a plain gray sweater and black slacks. As I pulled on my coat and headed outside, I heard the neighbor honking his horn at a few kids that were playing in the street. I shook my head as I started walking toward the flower shop. I arrived to find it dark. I opened up and flicked on the lights. A few moments later, my aunt came in, shivering from the cold. She drove and I walked. That was the funny part. "Oh my God, it's so cold," she said as she rubbed her hands together. I just smiled as I walked to the front door to unlock and to my amazement, found Connor standing there. My hands froze in mid-air as he caught my gaze. When I didn't move, he gestured to the door and I finally remembered what I had been trying to do. I unlocked the door and he walked in. He took a look around and then turned to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry I'm so early, but I need a bouquet of flowers," he said in a desperate tone. "Sure, what are you looking for?" I noticed that his eyes didn't hold the same pleasant light as they did yesterday. In fact, today he looked completely different. He hadn't shaved, and it looked like he hadn't slept a wink either. "I need something that would make a woman think twice about leaving." My heart stung by those words, and I swallowed hard. He was taken. Of course he was taken. He didn't look the way he did to be single. I pushed the idea of him trying to woo me away and walked to the counter. "Well, let's work on a few details then. Color, type, and quantity." He walked to the counter to meet me. "Big. Bigger than big. I want roses. I know yesterday I said they were too romantic, but today I want them. Lots of roses, but not in red. What's a good color for saying you're sorry?" I thought for a moment. Well, white is never wrong. A ghost of a smile reached his lips. "All right, white roses. Buckets of white roses. I want them delivered to this address." He pulled out a wad of paper and handed it to me. Please get them delivered there today before noon. I'll pay extra." Before I could answer, he reached out and took my hands in his. "Please, it's important."
Goodbye, open to goodbye. It's so much stronger than you think.
I found myself staring at the front door of the address Connor had provided. Inside the van were 3 dozen white roses in silver buckets. I walked out of the van and opened the door to retrieve them. I had just walked up to the front porch when the door flew open and a man walked out wearing a black silk robe. He had a black mustache and very dark, angry eyes. His dark hair was standing in different directions as if it was a compass as he marched to me. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Delivery for Miss Sheila Jones?" I asked. He laughed. "That sick, phony bastard. Get those damn flowers out of here. She doesn't want him anymore. He should stop this before I call the cops." Before I could say a word, he knocked the roses out of my hands and kicked the buckets toward the end of the pathway. I bent down to pick them up when he swung his foot and it accidentally connected to my jaw. I fell over and my world buzzed with blurred images. I heard a car door slamming and I could make out Connor's voice yelling. My jaw felt as if it had been ripped open. I tasted blood and the pain tore me apart. Literally, I felt myself being pulled to a standing position and I realized it was Connor helping me up. I could see that his lips were moving and arguing with the man with the mustache, but I heard no audio. And then I saw a pretty blonde run out with a white robe on. She came to stand in between the two men and shoved Connor away. I felt myself getting weak, and then I fell into a dark sleep. Connor. The aunt was giving me the evil eye for the 100th time. The girl, whose name I came to know was Dellanna, was now just waking up. The poor girl had been delivering my order, and the sick bastard had kicked her. It just made my blood boil that Sheila would choose that kind of man. I felt pretty bad for her because I was one who sent her there, and after she fainted, I took her back to the flower shop. Her aunt wasn't pleased to learn the story, and I turned out looking like a huge asshole. "Take it slow," she was saying as Dellanna tried to sit up. "God, your jaw is bruised. If anything is hurt permanently, I'll be suing." As she said this, she stared straight at me. "I'm okay," Dellanna said, wincing. "It was an accident." "I don't care," the aunt said. "I'm sorry," I said. The aunt turned to me. "You need to shut up." "Aunt Kate, it wasn't his fault. Stop blaming him. I'm sure he feels pretty bad himself." "I do," I admitted. "I never expected that to be like this. Please, accept my apology." I could see that her skin had bruised, and I'm sure she would be in a lot of pain. My inside was still boiling when I thought back to how Sheila's stupid new beau had kicked her. Whether he did it on accident or deliberately, it still made me fume. I watched as she sat up and took several deep breaths. Her aunt had taken her glasses off, and I noticed for the first time how green her eyes were. Behind her glasses, it faded, and I had failed to see them the first time I met her. I saw that she ran a shaking hand through her dark strands. Her aunt handed her the glasses, and she placed it on her face, hiding her beautiful eyes. She looked up at me, and my gut wrenched with guilt. "Stop looking at me like that," she said without warning. How am I looking at you?" "With pity, and I hate it," she said with stern confidence. Swallowing hard, I relaxed my face. "I'm sorry." "And stop saying you're sorry. It's not you who kicked me." "I know, but I still feel responsible." "Oh, I'm not letting you off the hook completely. You sent me there knowing I might see an angry new lover." I had to smile, and then the strangest thing happened. Her face lit up, and I found my heart slam against my chest. What the hell was that? The littlest happiness that shined through her, and it made me feel an emotion I couldn't really describe. I got up and walked closer to her. As I did, her aunt's protection shield came on, and she stepped forward. "That's as far as you'll come," her aunt said. "I wasn't going to bite," I said with a joking laugh. And then I saw the situation and retracted. Bad timing for jokes. You think? Her aunt frowned. Aunt Kate, I'm okay. Can you give me a moment alone with him? The aunt made a face, not really happy at her niece's request, but she couldn't deny her either. She stared at me one more time before she left. I let out the breath I was holding and relaxed suddenly. The idea of a woman with her aunt's expression staring at me made me feel as if I was being judged. Wait, I was being judged. Please, forgive my aunt, she said. She's very protective of me. Isn't that what your mother is for? My mother is dead. Oh, shit, I said as I realized my day was getting shittier as the moment ticked on. I didn't know what to say as she stared at me with those green puppy eyes of hers. I just ran a hand through my hair and pulled out a chair to sit. I'm not very good at this. Not good at what? Talking? Yeah, every word out of your mouth has been a bad joke or an insensitive mockery to a painful memory. I felt my face burn. That about wraps up my day. She crossed her arms and stared at me for a long time before speaking. Why did you send me there? I felt my throat close up. Why? Because I wanted to look desperate? Because I wanted to win her back? Because I wanted to embarrass her with an outrageous amount of flowers? But in the end, what came out of my mouth was nowhere as smart as what I had thought. I ended up saying I was looking to start a fight. Her eyes flared open and she scoffed loudly. And here I thought you were the decent man. You know, when you came in this morning to buy all those flowers, I thought, oh my, he's so romantic. This early and he's buying someone dozens of roses. And you were only looking to start a fight. Well, here's the eye-opener, pretty boy. I got the brunt of the fight you were looking to start, and I've got the bruise to prove it. I winced. Don't you think I feel bad about it? I didn't expect him to hurt you. I thought he'd just stand there and be stunned silent about my stupid actions. But when he started kicking the buckets, and then well, hey, I mean, I came out to help. Wow, she said, clearly not impressed. What a big hero you turned out to be. Thank you so much for tuning in to Dellanna. Part 2 will be uploaded shortly. I hope that you are enjoying this story.